Welcome to Insatiable, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of food, psychology, and culture. So you got to start with where you are, not some idealized version of how it should go. Perfect plans are not resilient plans. Resilient plans have time, space. They plan for things to go wrong. They don't expect that they won't. I'm your host, Ali Shapiro, an integrated health coach, 32-year and counting cancer survivor, and have radically healed my relationship with food and my body. And for the past 17 years, I've been working with clients individually, in group programs, and in company settings to do the same. Welcome. The information in this podcast should not be considered personal, individual, or medical advice. Today, I want to stop and celebrate an important milestone, which is 300 podcast episodes. Oh my God. When I started Insatiable back in 2016, which feels like a lifetime ago, I literally had to explain to people what a podcast was. I was like, it's kind of like radio, but you can listen on your own time and kind of tune in to exactly what you want to hear. But it was kind of funny to think about that we had to explain to people what podcasts are because now they are just a staple. I know I listen to a ton of them and I want to celebrate today. And before I'm going to celebrate with kind of 3 powerful lessons I've learned in the past 6 years of doing this podcast of both my own personal journey, but also the people I've gotten to speak with here. And most importantly, my clients who we really learn where the rubber hits the road because you can learn about a lot of things in clinical papers and sterile labs where a lot of this research is done on rats and mice. But what you really need to see is where does it hit in the real world with real people who are managing a lot of complexity right now. So going to get into that. But before I do, I just want to thank everybody who has tuned into the episode. I know so many of you have been listening since the beginning, and many of you have found this later and through random rabbit holes like you tell me. And so I just want to thank all of you, especially if you've ever shared an episode with a friend, for those of you who have left reviews, for those of you who've written in to tell me how much an episode has changed your life, or an Instagram DM, or back when I was more on Facebook, a comment on Facebook. It really means a lot, right? I am a small business and I rely on community support like most small businesses. And so this podcast has been made possible by the community support. And I just really want to thank you all. And I also, as a result of the community's support, Insatiable was recently named a FeedSpot top 20 emotional eating podcast. So found out about that a couple months ago. And I just want to thank all of you who have really supported the show. Again, by sharing with other people, listening, it really, really means a lot. So to mark this occasion, I'm going to share these 3 powerful lessons, okay? And again, kind of alluded to it earlier, but the beauty of my work is that I get to work with real people, real women over 40, and really get to see what works right now, right? Holistically, so that they can create sustainable, freeing results for this phase of our lives, okay? And what I hope to share with you today is to show you what is essential, okay? So that you can cut through the noise. One of the biggest outcomes that I have in my work with my clients is they're like, oh, I can tune out the noise so much better. I know what works for me. And dear goddess, it is loud out there, right? Wellness as an industry, has kind of become what it was originally railing against, which was capitalism and having to overtreat, overspend. But that's what's happening out there now on this side. So what we're going to talk about today is just what is essential so you can really focus on what true health is about, okay? This episode was really inspired by a couple months ago. I was on one of my bike rides with one of my best bike riding buddies. And she told me that she's like, Ali, from listening to your podcast, talking to you and talking to my neighbor, I started eating breakfast. And I was like, oh my God, that's great. How do you feel? Do you have more energy? Do you feel like you can bike ride better? And she's like, I feel really good. And she's like, and I didn't gain weight. And I was like, why would you gain weight from eating breakfast, right? This actually helps our metabolism here over 40. And she said, well, I lost 30 pounds. I think it was 30 pounds. You know how the memory works these days. 30 pounds 5 years ago. And the only way to lose it off and keep it off was when I was able to do it with intermittent fasting. And I was like, that's interesting. And as we continued to bike, she said, yeah, it was like the one intermittent fasting was like how I didn't feel deprived. Like I could still eat what I wanted, but I just had to do it within a certain time frame. And when she said that, I just had this like huge aha, as I often do when I'm moving my body. That's when all the all the things connect for me. Is that when most people are talking about what works, what they're really saying is this is something that will enable me to lose or maintain my weight without feeling deprived. Okay. So that is what people are saying they need about what works. Okay. How can I lose weight or maintain my weight without feeling deprived? So that need is pretty easy to meet under 40, meaning most things will work. Okay. But over 40, it's a different ballgame. And what this episode is going to revolve around, mostly in some ways, is satiety shifts. Okay. So what I've learned in the past 6 years is how you go about weight loss, but also health. Okay. So that's a big thing that changes. We have to focus on health and not just weight loss over 40. And I'm going to get into how they're not opposites and you want to focus on both anyways. Okay. It's not just for efficiency, it's for better results. So how we approach health and weight has to change. What I mean is the quality of your approach. Okay. Not what you do, but how you do it is what will make or break your results and your enjoyment of this whole process. Because again, health is not the destination. Okay. It is the vehicle to living your best life. But what's happened with capitalism entering the chat and wellness is that everything is about now wellness, a job, and what do you buy and what are you doing? It's like, no, health and weight loss included is about how we're being. Yes, there's some things we need to do, but we need to enjoy this process. It cannot be a job. It cannot be 10 things, okay, that we need to do every day. It's just not going to happen. So I want to share today, again, what's essential. And these insights will help you if you want to lose weight, maintain weight, lose the food noise, or improve your health. All of these efforts that we're talking about move the needle in that direction. Did I mention I love efficiency? I don't know anyone else who has extra time, money, energy, headspace to do things that aren't essential in this day and age. Okay. So all of this is going to apply. And we're going to dive into the 3 things again that work over 40, one for each 100 episodes. All right. So what works? Number 1, the how of weight loss changes after 40. And again, we'll get into health stuff here too. Yes, weight loss still comes down to a calorie deficit, okay? Which is eating fewer calories than you burned. This has not changed. And you might be thinking, duh, Allie, but I'm going to be real honest with you. Because, right, even though some of my clients lose weight and come to me with weight loss as a goal, that is not what my main focus is, okay? So when I set out to lose my 30 pounds of postpartum and what I would eventually figure out menopause weight, I had not tried to lose weight in over probably 13 years, okay? So I was like, oh my God, how do I even lose weight? I was so confused because I was inflamed. I had joint pain. I was exhausted. And I knew that I had to center safety in my body, right? And safety is getting proper nutrition, getting enough calories. It's moving our bodies, but there's other emotional safety that we're going to get into. So there was just so much noise because I read everything, not everything, but I am trying to understand things from a health at every size perspective. I'm trying to understand things from a health perspective. And believe it or not, there's some overlap, but there's contradictory views there, right? And I'm someone who tries to hold all of it and know that like it depends on the person, right? But it confused me. Like, oh my God, should I even want to lose weight? Am I giving into the patriarchy? Like, what is happening? But I'm not sleeping. I'm inflamed and I don't feel good in my body and I have plantar fasciitis and I'm injuring myself every time I move, right? I was confused a little bit. But here's the essential news. It is still about a calorie deficit. So here's how this simplifies things. Once you know this, you can know that intermittent fasting isn't actually magical, right? It wasn't that intermittent fasting worked for my friend when nothing else did. It was that it enabled her to have a calorie deficit without feeling deprived. And for those of you concerned with health, right, we hear that, oh, intermittent fasting is good for autophagy, right? Autophagy is where the weakest cells that may turn into disease or whatnot get wiped out through intermittent fasting. But the research shows that that kind of health benefit happens just from any calorie deficit, not from intermittent fasting. Okay. And we also have to be real with ourselves. How many of us are motivated by autophagy, right? I mean, as someone as a cancer survivor, I have a little bit more incentive, but that's not motivating me, right? So keto or low carb isn't magical over 40, right? It's not something that none of this stuff is working in some magical property. For most people, you have to find a way to eat that enables you to maintain a calorie deficit without feeling hungry and deprived. And yes, you can be in a calorie deficit without feeling hungry, especially if for your health and what your body wants to be at is more than like 15 or 20 pounds over what you are. Okay. It's pretty easy to not feel hungry and deprived. What has changed over 40 is that how you create that deficit without feeling hungry or deprived or wrecking your metabolism is what has to shift. Okay. So here's what I learned from my own 25-pound weight loss journey and from countless clients. To feel satisfied, to not be hungry or have cravings, you have to dial in your nutrition quality, not just the quantity, right? So it's not just about, well, Weight Watchers says these points and I'm getting the correct numerical value of points. No, what are the quality of those points, right? Weight Watchers used to penalize fat. They used to prioritize like high carbohydrates. I don't know how their system is working, right? That may not work for you anymore, right? If you are doing just calories, you have to look at the quality of those calories, okay? And essentially, satiety or how satisfied you feel from your food is less automatic than before all these hormonal and aging shifts, okay? So I'm going to give you my example. I know I've shared it before, but for new listeners, when I was trying to lose weight, when I was like, 42 to what am I now, 46, I went slow and steady, if you can't tell. I had hired a sleep coach because I was having horrible insomnia and it was affecting such the quality of my life. And she had me track my food. And again, this is the first time I had tracked my food in probably 13, 14 years, right? No real health issues except, infertility, but had cleared up all my health issues, was able to easily maintain my weight from my own truths with food. And I had thought I was eating kind of a paleo-ish diet, right? But when I actually looked at the macros are protein, carbs, and fat, I realized that I was eating like more like a keto diet. Okay. I was doing almond flour muffins, almond flour pizza crust, right? Because I was gluten free at the time. I'm now like kind of gluten light. And so I was eating this really high fat diet with not getting enough protein and carbs. And so I had to start eating more carbs and protein and really make sure that happened so that I could feel satiated, which is like not what happened before 40. I was fine. I did not have any cravings or hunger. Okay. And so satiety is how like these GLP-1s work, right? GLPs are Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, and I'm totally forgetting the other brand name of Zepbound, but it's the same drug. They aren't helping people magically lose weight in a new way. People are eating less because these drugs make them feel more satisfied from their food, right? That's the mechanism of action, as they say, right? Whenever you take medicine, it's like, what's the mechanism of action? What's actually working? And it's always satiety. But here's the physiological shifts of what happens over 40. So as we especially have declining estrogen, that reduces satiety signals, okay? This makes us less insulin sensitive, which means we feel less satisfied from our food. So that is a huge shift, which is why you have to dial in the quality of your nutrition. We also can't get away with extreme calorie cuts anymore, okay? We need smarter, more sustainable approach. Cutting calories, right, tanks your metabolism. I was talking with a client who has lost 25 pounds through Truth with Food. And we were like, I wish we would have known this like in our 20s because, right, you used to think like what I used to do is like, okay, if I cut my calories to 1200 and I lose 2 pounds a week, right? It's like, I thought I had to stay at 1200. It's like, no, you want to like eat as much as possible because your metabolism like tanks, right? And that's why sustainable weight loss can be so hard is because people are eating way too little, their metabolism tanks and adapts, and then they put weight back on when that is obviously unsustainable. So that really stresses the body, okay? So for example, right now, because I probably am in like the last 10 pounds of what is actually healthy for me, if I cut even more than like 250 calories a day, I wake up in the middle of the night because I'm super active and I just can't cut calories. Like I can't even lose a pound a week right now. That's okay. That's cool. This is not what my life is about. It's a really nice to have for me right now. But people trying to lose 2 pounds a week, a pound and a half, and I'm gonna an upcoming episode, we're gonna do a holistic approach to GLP-1s, but some of these people are dosing at such high rates that it's basically a starvation diet, right? This is not sustainable anymore. We have to go slow and steady because we need that satiety and it's harder to get it. So what helps? Okay, protein helps. You have to prioritize it. You've heard of that, okay? But you do have to find the type of protein that works for your body. Do you do better with animal protein? So being more paleo-ish? Do you do better with plant protein, more vegetarian? Or are you more like a Mediterranean diet and need both, right? So in my work, I use a nervous system based model to help us figure out what foods work best for us, what kind of plant protein, animal protein, plant protein, what kind of protein you need, the quality of it, okay? And this is really important. To give you an example, one of my clients in Truth with Food, this last round, we were chatting and she was having some GI issues, right? And she's like, but I just don't feel good when I'm eating all of this animal protein. And she's like, but like Dr. Stacey Sims is always like, you need a lot of protein, right? And I was like, well, Dr. Stacey Sims is a vegetarian. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that. And I said, and the research shows that often, plant protein and animal protein can be similar, right? In effects in terms of helping to build muscle, et cetera. But again, whatever the studies say, we have to think about what feels good for you. So as she started to experiment with, maybe having fish, but not having to lean so heavy on these proteins that were hurting her stomach right now, she started to feel better. She started to feel more satiated and her GI issues started to clear up. Okay. So got to know the quality of protein that really works for you. You need carbohydrates. Yes, you need them, especially for hormonal health. You need them for muscle preservation, right? We had Liz Wolfe come on the podcast and give us an excellent understanding of metabolism. We'll link in the show notes to that episode. But if you don't have carbohydrates, your body starts needing that kind of energy and it eats into your muscle. And we need to increase muscle preservation for satiety too, okay? So if you are metabolically challenged, meaning maybe your doctor said, hey, you got high triglycerides, high A1C, high fasting, you may need to cut them back a little bit, but not completely. That's not the answer, okay? Carbs really make us feel satisfied. And if you're having trouble with sleep, carbs are chef's kiss for sleep, especially at dinner. Lastly, right, muscle mass, okay? Muscle mass influences satiety. This is why carbs, protein, and lifting are really important, okay? Not only does this help us burn more calories at rest, which is super important if you want to maintain or lose weight, but more muscle gives you more satiety, okay? It offers better nutrition absorption and helps keep you as insulin sensitive as you can be without as much estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, okay? So this is really important for satiety. So over 40, right? This isn't about perfection too, I want to notice, because a lot of my clients come in with perfectionism. This is not about getting all of this perfectly right. And the more you know how to balance your blood sugar, you can have a range. This is about a Goldilocks zone, not too much, not too little, okay? So in summary, weight loss is still about a calorie deficit, but how you achieve it over 40 has to change so you don't feel deprived and so you feel satiated. Focus on foods that make you feel satisfied, not just being good because of old internalized diet rules you've taken as fact, rather than one person's idea of what may work for some people at a certain time in their life. Okay, what works? Number 2, you have to find joy in movement, or we can call it exercise, whatever works for you. If you are over 40 and still using exercise to punish yourself, to make up for eating, we have to shift that. I know it's like, okay, but how? I'm going to talk about it. Give me a minute. I'm rushing myself. So my wonderful client, Karen. She is a physical therapist for stroke victims. And she has told me, and I think you'll think this makes a lot of sense when you hear it, that once people have strokes, no matter how many comorbidities they have, meaning what already like kind of you can think of these as almost like pre-existing conditions. The people who stop moving, who stop doing their rehab, who stop walking, they fare much worse, no matter what their pre-existing conditions. Okay. So this is one of the biggest tragedies and travesties of diet culture is that we forgot the importance and how meaningful movement can be outside of just burning calories. Exercise doesn't have to be about punishment. It doesn't have to be about only burning calories. It is helpful for mental health, right? I hate that we divide mental and physical health. In indigenous cultures, spiritual, soul, emotional, physical needs, they're all the same. And that is so true. We are whole beings. So when you move your body, it helps with resilience. It helps with capacity. It helps give you a little boost, maybe, right? When the day could go either way. And then if you're feeling good and you go and knock out a hard workout, oh, feels so good, right? So this is one of the biggest ways you can shift your relationship with exercise is paying attention to how it affects your mental health and how capable you are of managing stress. Okay. That is a big thing that I do because we all have different periods of intense stress, right? The other thing is it helps with satiety and hormonal balance. Okay. Strength training does this. What we think of cardio does this. Walking 10 minutes after you eat will make you feel more satisfied and bring your blood sugar levels down to pre-eaten meals. That is incredible. Walking is so simple, right? Capitalism makes everything a thing. Exercise is a thing. You have to wear an outfit. You have to go to a place. You have to wear a heart rate monitor. No, walking counts. We dismiss the easy things. So if we don't start to pay attention to things beyond calories or exercise is more than punishment, we miss noticing and making these connections. Movement, exercise is essential for sleep and stress recovery, right? Walking is so important for stress recovery. We all need to be more resilient right now, but what people don't realize is half of resilience is recovery. It's not always having things be so hard. That's just a recipe for burnout, okay? So one of the biggest ways that I find clients can start making movement consistent that doesn't have to do with weight loss is connected to productivity and creativity and clarity. Okay. So this is like, I used to think like, oh, I can't walk because it's taking time from work and I'm going to fall so behind I had insomnia and dealing with insomnia forced me to try to expand and have more flexible ideas of what exercise could be. But when I started connecting at first, like walking to helping me sleep more, as I was doing that, I was like, oh, I'm having insights. Like I want to tell this client this, right? And like insights found me, right? Oh, I want to say this in a better way. And that's what helped me continue to do it, right? So for a lot of my clients who are like really into their careers and work is a really important part of their identity, that is true. For those of us who are parents, or caretaking, it helps us show up as better caretakers, right? So as we start to connect that to things outside of weight loss, it becomes more easy to be consistent. So ideas of movement you enjoy could be walking. Mine is biking with friends. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. We talk about our kids, our spouses, it's just, it's like, we're all like, we need this. It can be strength training to feel really powerful. Okay. It can be roller skating. So shout out to my friend Kathleen, who you may have remember. She's been on the podcast. She used to run Being Boss. She's a dear friend of mine and she's super into roller skating. She is learning Detroit style roller skating and loves it, right? It's like, oh my God, what a release. I have another client who does horseback riding, right? I have another client who just wrapped up with Truth with Food and she has lost, I think, 26 pounds. I can't remember exactly, but dropped her fasting glucose 20 points and no longer has food noise, right? Because we address the roots of belonging and satiety. And she can't believe all the space that has opened up in her mind. And she has made a couple friends that want to do the Appalachian Trail. So she's starting to practice hiking the AT. And she's like, it is so fun to do it in a way to challenge myself and get the stress benefits without it being about calories. I'm like, I know, right? Like, again, biggest tragedy of diet culture is we have looked over the most important reasons to move. Okay. So we are meant to move. Okay. We're not meant to be sitting all day, but that doesn't have to mean hours at the gym. So find ways to weave movement into your life that feel good, right? Like my son Essa loves basketball. So I'm like, oh, haven't got a lot of steps today. Definitely feeling a little lethargic. Let me play basketball with him, right? It's not a thing, but it's ways to be active. Bonus points if it connects you to nature, friends, your inner wisdom. Okay. So over 40, movement has to become about more than calories. It can be about that too. Make it joyful, make it meaningful. And I'm going to talk more about this in the next What Works number 3, but you have to have a flexible mindset about it, okay? What does it need to be for this season of your life? It doesn't have to mean it's about stress resilience forever. It doesn't have to mean it's about being with friends right now forever, right? So, just to give you a quick example of that, I used to use exercise as punishment. And then once I had my own truce with food and was just eating like a normal person, meaning just 3 meals a day, whatever, that was like not a big deal, I really wasn't consistent with working out. I had to find new reasons to do it. And so when I really started to shift my relationship to exercise was when I was diagnosed with infertility. And I was like, oh man, I gotta get all the efforts on deck. And so for me, that meant walking more, right? And being out in the sunlight. I wanted to get enough vitamin D and well, sunlight has so much more than vitamin D. And I wanted to make space so that spiritually it felt like there was room for a baby, right? Fortunately, it all worked, but that's when I really started connecting movement to something more meaningful for me than weight loss. Then during the pandemic, it was for my sanity. It was the only thing to do with a newborn and going through the last gasps of menopause. And then it was about my sleep. And for those of you who have taken Truce with Food, you'll totally track this. But it's really how I access the feminine aspect of God, which lives in all of our bodies. We all have it. It's intuition, wisdom. It comes to us very subtly. But if we're not in our bodies, which many of us aren't, and I understand why, I have so much empathy for that. It took me a long time to come back into my body after cancer, dieting, etc. But there's so much information there. Like even yesterday, I had written on my calendar that I had a dentist appointment. And as I was biking, it came to me that I was like, I didn't get a reminder. And I had gone out there before thinking I had a dentist appointment and like got the date wrong. And so I was like, I'm going to call them. And wouldn't you know, I had already had the appointment in April. And so I forgot to cancel that on my calendar. They had got me in ahead of time. I couldn't remember when I had gone out. Welcome to my life sometimes. Like, what is time, anyways? But long story short, it was like, oh, that's what I mean by like access to wisdom and intuition. Like that thought came to me. I didn't generate that thought. And it came because I was moving my body. Right. So that is why in my current life phase, I'm moving my body to keep a charge, as I talked about in the Orange Theory episode, which I will totally link to. I love how much that episode's blowing up. I didn't think it would be so popular. But I'm sharing that example because you have to have the flexibility and figure out different ways that movement helps you so that based on what phase of life and for now, what's going on with you, you will find a way to connect that movement and make it work for you like double time, right? Yes, it's health benefits, it's weight benefits if you're trying to lose weight, but it is for these immediate quality of life benefits. So lastly, what works number 3? You need to learn to pivot, not be perfect. And this may be the most important lesson over 40. In fact, I know it is because it's the foundation to being able to do what works number 1 and number 2. Okay. I'm going to be honest. I don't really follow anyone under 40 or who isn't managing multiple things. I mean, there's some people in my feed, obviously. And though, you just don't know what it's like until you're in it, right? I have so many friends right now who are starting to go through perimenopause, are starting to have symptoms and like, oh my God, Allie, I get what you mean, right? It's not anybody's fault. We can only know until we go through something. I'm like, right? Like it's a thing, right? It's like, right? We're going to get into how stress affects us more in a minute. But life is just messier. And it's not a magical number over 40. But most of my clients are 40 and over. And what they're managing is their careers are at their peaks, right? Or they're transitioning careers. I have a lot of clients, especially after we work together. About 80% of them want to shift in some way, especially the entrepreneurs are realizing, oh my God, this, whatever, that's a whole other episode. But some of my clients, their kids don't need them as intensely. And so they're in a transition of what do I do with my time now? Because I chose to stay home with my kids and really prioritize motherhood. Some of us are doing both. A lot of my clients are caring for aging and dying parents, right? There is just so much more, right? And at the same time, you're tired of dealing with everyone's bullshit, right? Okay, so more responsibilities, more stressors, more unexpected twists. Okay, so trying to follow a perfect plan, that's a setup for feeling like you failed. Okay, instead, you need to learn how to pivot, right? And I just realized up above, I didn't even get into the more health complexity that you have as you age, right? My freaking teeth routine itself alone. My God, I had 2 implants last year. I have just learned I have to add a water pick to my routine. I'm flossing after each meal. Like, ugh, right? It's like there's so much more. Again, always trying to balance. I don't want to age like most Americans, and the body does take more work. You just have to learn how to prioritize it as we age. So we need a more flexible mindset, right? Half the people who came up with this idea of like a perfect plan never had caregiving responsibilities, maybe never had any health challenges, right? Probably had complete control over their time, right? We probably know it was like a wealthy white dude, right? I'm just saying, I'm just saying. But for the rest of us who, have competing commitments that take up our time, we need something else. And here's why this matters. Physically, stress impacts satiety, okay? So it's not just nutrition and exercise, it's stress. And I'm talking chronic stress. I'm not talking about like I'm actually dealing with a health scare. It's minor. I'm going to talk about it in a future episode right now. Whew, right? But it's affecting me, right? And so I'm not talking about these kind of scares. I'm talking about the chronic stress of always feeling like you're behind, overworking, burning out. I'm talking about the chronic stress of perfectionism. I'm talking about the chronic stress of trying to always people please and make sure no one ever experiences disappointment, sadness, that stuff. Okay, cortisol and ghrelin. Well, cortisol increases ghrelin. So ghrelin is what's considered the hunger hormone. Okay. So when you don't sleep a lot, ghrelin goes up, right? Think of grrr. It stimulates hunger. Okay. So when you are under chronic stress like that, and even episodic stress, but more so chronic stress, it goes up and satisfaction with your food goes down. Okay. Because the hormones that once buffered our stress, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, are declining. Okay. Then you also have leptin, which makes you feel satisfied from food. Stress can lead to leptin resistance, where the body becomes less sensitive to leptin satiety signals. Okay. So again, not feeling deprived is harder over 40 because of stress. Stress in your 20s and 30s just doesn't hit the same way, right? So this can lead to overeating and weight gain. Okay. So if you think of your stress levels like a thermometer in your 20s and 30s, and I know we all have different experiences, but from a base physiological standpoint, you were starting the day at like 1 or 2. Okay. But as you creep into your late 40s, early 50s, go through menopause, you lose more and more of those hormones. Your stress thermometer starts at like a 5 or 6. Okay. It's just how it is. So you're going to feel everything more, drinking more, over exercising more, going on and off track more, perfectionism, then crashing and burning. All of that you feel more. The body just registers it. Okay. So emotionally, many of us are still carrying these stress patterns. We think of them as perfectionism or all or nothing. Okay. But I want to tell you these strategies make sense. These patterns make sense. They aren't flaws, but they also aren't fixed personality traits. Okay. Perfectionism is a safety strategy, right? If I do the thing perfectly, I follow the keto diet perfectly, there's no chance I'm not going to fail, right? It's not really true, but we like to think of that. We're eliminating the illusion of risk. If I do this work project perfectly, no one's going to find me out that I'm an imposter or I'm not going to fail. Okay. Perfectionism is a safety strategy. It makes complete sense. I get it. And it creates really rigid thinking, completely rigid thinking. I used to think I was all or nothing. Okay. I was like, I'm all or nothing. And now I realize, no, no, no. That's a developmental plateau. That I was just how I was thinking. Right. And most of us start at this developmental plateau in these protective strategies, but these strategies just don't serve us anymore. They might have been really effective at one point, but not anymore. So for example, what has worked for me over 40 so that I have time to be the parent I want to be the partner I want to be, and tend to my health the way that I want to do is I had to tackle my overworking. Okay. And the binary or all or nothing or either or, however you think about it, perfectionism that I was dealing with was I was like, I'm always behind. I'm behind and behind. I could never work enough. Right. And I was judging myself constantly. Right. So the binary was I'm ahead or behind. I was like, oh my God, if I'm ahead, I'm safe. If I'm behind, I'm at risk for not getting things done, missing out on stuff, financial ruin, all the things. Right. And so that is one way. And it's a very common way that a lot of my clients think. And this is why we can't compare ourselves to others, right? The messiness means we're just not all living the same life. We're not running the same race. We may be getting off medications, and that's great and helpful for us. We may be switching medications that take longer than we expect. In this last Truce with Food group, we had two people who had major surgeries, and both of them didn't go as planned, right? This is very common. And so they can't compare themselves to the people who didn't have surgery. Or we've had people whose parents' health has rapidly declined. You can't compare yourself to that person, right? It's just we're all dealing with different stuff. You have to make peace with longer timelines. It's just essential. And I know that's hard. It's taken me 3 years. So I have a lot of empathy there. And you got to work to do that. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to end up taking longer time, right? That's the irony of what happens here. So to thrive over 40, you really need flexible thinking, and you have to work on your mindset to make this happen, to be able to pivot. But I am not talking about mindset the way that I see so many people talk about mindset. I'm not talking about negative or positive and like, I just got to get this done or I have to push through discomfort. That's not always true. That's actually part of the problem, right? Even negative, positive, push through, don't push through. What would, I hear a lot of stuff that will all get us started, but it doesn't keep us going. A lot of it is all or nothing. It's doubling down on perfectionism though, right? I have to think like this. What I'm talking about is a more expansive, creative mindset, one that is flexible. And this is why I shared my example with exercise, right? Okay, it can be about calories, and that's what I've been socialized and conditioned to believe. But I have also discovered it is more flexible and expansive when it's also, I tie it to my mental health, when it also means my sleep is going to get better, when I'm also going to be able to be more patient when Essa is going through a certain developmental stage where he's pushing back on everything, right? It's like, woo, right? So that's the creative and expansive mindset I'm talking about, where exercise, food mean more than just about weight loss, right? So we can include weight loss, but for sustainable habits and to learn how to pivot and have this flexible mindset, we have to learn how it means about more things than just weight loss. Okay. So as we say in my program, it's not either or, it's holding the and, right? A lot of times clients will come to my program and say, I'm finally doing something for me, right? And then what they come to realize pretty quickly is like, oh, and this is going to benefit everybody in my life, right? Right? It's like this either or is everywhere, the way that we think, right? Or if I'm investing time in myself, then I'm taking from others, right? This is part of this all or nothing rigid thinking. It's either my needs or other people's needs instead of, no, where is it when everybody wins? And again, as a mother, someone helping with aging parents, it can't always be just only about us, but there is so much more where we can hold the and that's the work. And that's how you pivot, is to get out of these all or nothing ways of thinking. Okay. Like I've even had clients think health and weight loss are at odds, right? And then through the work, they're like, oh, I'm seeing how being satisfied, feeling good, this actually is going to serve my weight loss goals. Yes, they aren't either or. Health and weight loss are in a healthy way are moving in the right direction in a sustainable way. There are certainly ways to be unhealthy with weight loss, and it doesn't have to be that way. So when you learn how to pivot, this is how you go from all or nothing cycles of on and off, or, some people think, oh, I'm perfect and then chuck it, F it. When you learn that, you learn a flexible and no-fail structure that meets you where you're at in your real life, and you can succeed beyond what you can imagine right now. Okay? So how do you really do that? I'm going to give you some tips now, but this is also what I teach, and you can learn in my upcoming fall program, Why Mighting This Now Live. the courage for consistency. Okay. This is a skill we can learn. It's not something anyone's going to teach you. It's not something you learned at school, but you can learn it. And in my opinion, you just have to learn it for the world we live in. Another huge outcome clients say is, I have so much more discernment, right? That's what flexible thinking is. And it's like, yeah, we need discernment for the world that we live in, not only for who's peddling bullshit with wellness and health, but also how we are going to build a better world through all this collapse. And for anyone who's like thinking flexible thinking, like, how does that show up in my everyday life? It's when the answer is it depends, right? And you bring in context. So any of you who are experts at what you do, which I know a lot of you are, you already have some of this flexible thinking, right? If you are an attorney, right, you know that the way you interpret the law, well, it depends, right? If you are, a lot of my clients are in leadership positions, right, at their work, you know the answer is it depends, right? A lot of my clients are therapists, are doctors, are in traditional healthcare themselves. They will tell you there's like so many decision trees that make, right? But we still think health and weight loss is just about diet and exercise and not this flexible thinking and not learning how to pivot, not be perfect. Okay. So I will put a link in the show notes to sign up for a free masterclass that I am offering on September 3rd called Catch Yourself Before You Fall Off Track. And it's a free sneak preview of my Why Am I Eating This Now group program. So if that's calling to you and this resonates, join us. It is so much freaking fun. Okay, so some beginning tips of how to pivot instead of trying to be perfect with someone else's plan or your own perfect timeline is you have to accept there is no perfect plan out there. Okay. And this is hard. People will sell you on that, right? In traditional marketing, you're taught like identify a problem, agitate it, right? And what that means is, oh my God, I'm going to get you into your insecurities. I'm going to give you so much fear. I'm going to make you have so much self-doubt that you're going to pay me to alleviate that feeling, right? You already feel overwhelmed with nutrition. I'm going to tell you, this is why this is different. This is why this isn't diets. This is why it's about you won't feel hungry. This is your answer, right? Oh, I feel so much better temporarily. But then long term, you beat yourself up rather than realizing you don't need to be fixed, but your approach does. Okay. So I'm going to do an entire future podcast on this. But for now, you have to accept there's no perfect plan. If it was perfect and simple, you would have figured it out already. That's just the plain truth. You are smart, even if you don't feel that way. You are. And that's why I love live groups that I do because there's so much power in working in community with this. You see that, oh my God, everyone has different needs, different health histories. They're dealing with different challenges. And when you see how people actually start to work through their all or nothing patterns, you're like, we're all so different. And we all have such different, unique circumstances. But of course, there's universal themes. You're like, no one can ever follow the same plan in the same way. So that's one thing is you have to accept that. Second thing, don't start with the end in mind. Start where you are and focus on momentum and learning. Okay. You got to start with your real life, not some idealized version of how it should go. Right. I've talked about how when I was postpartum and like, all right, I got to start lifting. Right. The first 3 months I tried to lift, like I wasn't sleeping, like something happened and I was injuring myself. And I was like, oh my God, thank God I know this. Thank God I've worked through all of this for myself. I'm like, you just got to focus on showing up, right? And then then after 3 months, I was like, I'm hiring a trainer. This isn't working trying to do it at home on a video, right? It's like, okay, I learned, okay? Then I started working with a trainer and I had written off, like I was going to a CrossFit gym and I saw people doing box jumps. I'm like, I will never do that. Like, have those people had children? I have plantar fasciitis. And my trainer really met me where I was. Hat tip to Erica Martin. I'm no longer working with her, but she's the best, one of the best. And within a year, I was doing box jumps, right? So you got to start with where you are, not some idealized version of how it should go, right? And you will learn as you go what works for you, and you will learn how to build a more resilient plan. Perfect plans are not resilient plans. Resilient plans have time, space. They plan for things to go wrong. They don't expect that they won't. One of the biggest things I had to do is like, all right, how am I going to handle when I'm sleep deprived? What is actually going to work for me movement wise when I'm sleep deprived? I could do a whole podcast on that. But I had to actually plan for kind of like my worst days, right? Not all the time, but I had to have plans for those instead of waiting for perfect conditions. The last thing is I want you to focus on needs, not habits. Okay. So needs offer flexibility. So a need is I need to move my body, not I have to walk 4 days a week, right? A habit is I have to not eat carbs or have to reduce my carbs, right? That's a habit. Okay. Don't eat carbs. I don't know. Maybe do people still do those as habit? The need is, oh my God, I need to balance my blood sugar, right? It's not about eliminating carbs or anything. It's I need to balance my blood sugar for satiety. So when you understand your macro percentages of protein, fats, and carbs and the quality of those, you can do that whether you have food at home or whether you're going out to eat or whether, like many of us, you're hit by, our power was out for 3 days, right? Thank God I had the flexibility to know how to still balance my blood sugar because we had to eat out. My parents offered to have us over for dinner. Like there was just so much unpredictability, but I was able to eat for my sanity and to manage all of the complexity that was happening with the storm damage to our car, to our trees, like, all that kind of stuff. I'm also going to link to the Orange Theory episode about needs with movement and how, okay, if you're embarking on that knowing but not doing gap, it just means your needs are changing. So I'll link to that since it was so popular. Okay, so in summary, perfection isn't possible. Pivoting is powerful. You need to work on a more flexible mindset. You need to expand your mindset of what food and exercise or moving your body means for you. Okay, and it can be at different times and different phases of your life, different seasons. So this isn't about a positive or negative mindset or pushing through. It's about a flexible mindset. So final thoughts, what works over 40? Here's our recap. Weight loss, still about a calorie deficit. And in truth, even health is if you care about autophagy, but you can be healthy without autophagy. But you have to focus on satiety. Eat in a way that keeps you full and nourished, not feeling deprived. You have to move for meaningful reasons, not just weight loss. Movement is medicine, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, on a soul level. Whatever you need it to be that day, that's what your movement is going to look like. Lastly, you have to learn to pivot over perfection. Do not start with the end in mind. Surrender that there's no perfect plan. Keep your eyes on your own paper. You can't you can't cheat on what other people are doing, right? Be where you are in your real life and know what support you need. Okay. Body included amongst imperfection, right? So this is planning for things to not go the way you expect them to and surrender your timeline. And again, I know that's kind of a spiritual lesson. At least it is for me. Lastly, if you need help with the knowing but not doing gap in terms of these what works ideas, or like I said, with just regular exercise and nutrition, especially, I hope you will consider Why Am I Eating This Now? It is a beautiful invitation into consistency in a way that is nurturing, builds self-trust, and will get you so much more than just about food. Okay. And you can get a free sneak peek of that at my free workshop called Untangle Your Food Triggers on Wednesday, September 3rd. And there's a link to sign up in the show notes. We'll do lots of Q&A and coaching. And thank you for the support to get to episode 300. Talk about consistency, having to look different at different times. Given I've been doing this podcast for almost 4 years, it's taken many different rhythms, different focuses, and yet the guiding mission is always to talk about the intersection of food, psychology, and culture and deliver information to you so that you can live your most whole, healthiest, feeling alive life. So thank you for joining me in that journey.